Hello, Wanderers. If you have played the Game of Thrones mod for Crusader Kings 3, you will know that that is a labor of love and is one of the most detailed mods that you can get for Crusader Kings 3. There are some amazing total conversion mods out there, but the team behind the Game of Thrones mod have definitely stepped up and really recreated Westeros in a way that wasn't even seen in the Crusader Kings 2 version of the mod. However, if you have played it for any amount of time, like I have, you'll know that after a little while, things can tend to get a little too stable. So, I have decided to add some chaos into the mix in order to make this mod more enjoyable for myself and hopefully for you as well, because I will be leaving a link to the save file in the description of this video. So here you can see the world of Westeros, and it is a little bit of a mess. Now, for those of you who have been following the channel for a while, I have played some recent roleplay series, first starting with House Peak and then playing as House Blackfire. And this world is the consequence of both of those two playthroughs. So we are starting in the year 400, which is quite a while after the game starts in the mod at the very least. And things have definitely changed. So I'm gonna go through things there. So if you haven't seen those first seasons, hopefully things will still make sense for you, and perhaps some of you will get some enjoyment out of this save file as well. So to start things off and kind of build some of the lore, because I have tried to keep lore in mind while I was making this save file and this scenario. To start things off, we kind of need to go back, and we got to go back to a particular character, and that is Daemon the Mad Flame. Now, Daemon the Mad Flame is the son of King Aegon, the king beyond the wall. Now, in those previous seasons, the Blackfires had a rebellion. They landed here in the Vale, but they were kicked out. They lost their rebellion, but Daemon here, or sorry, Aegon, was sent to the wall where he promptly deserted and fled north and essentially began ruling over the wildlings. And he ended up becoming king beyond the wall and leading an army south. Now, that was another failure, but his son, Daemon, the Mad Flame, would take up that mantle, take up that torch, so to speak. And in the end, he would be successful in conquering the Iron Thrones, in conquering the Seven Kingdoms. However, that did not last for very long. So, not very many years after he took the throne, he died under suspicious circumstances. Now, we suspect that it was the Dornish, because the Dornish actually supported the invasion of the Iron Throne by Daemon, and there we had to kind of figure out a reason why they would do that. Well, I think it was because they wanted this. They wanted a world, a Westeros, in which Dorne could be independent once more. So they facilitated the invasion of Daemon against the Lannisters, who were ruling the Iron Thrones at the time. And then they murdered him and just caused complete instability. So after Daemon invaded with that wildling army, he had an army of 40,000 wildlings. They took ships that they had built up here in the north and they sailed them down, invaded the kingdoms, and won that war. Well, after all that, things just descended into chaos. But first, let's take a little look at the title history of the Seven Kingdoms. So we can kind of go back and see how things played out. So in this scenario, we did have the Mad King, of course, and he lost the war against Robert. But Robert died under suspicious circumstances at only age 27. That made it so that his daughter, or his supposed daughter, Myrcella, inherited the throne. Now, we obviously know that this was not the daughter of Robert. It was, in fact, the daughter of Cersei and Jaime. but she held the throne for only a little while before a army led by the Dornish once again came in and put King Aegon here, the son of Rhaegar, on the throne. Now, he was a bit of a mad king himself. He did end up executing Myrcella, but he ruled for quite some time. His son, Rhaegar, took the throne and he ruled there for, some time, but not really too long here. Only 4 years, you can see, before Tyrion, yes, Tyrion, who follows the faith of the Eight, took the throne installed by faction demand. Just the instability of the Targaryen rule and the cruelty of King Aegon here caused the situation in which Tyrion could take the throne. Now, he ruled for a few years, 5 years, before his son Tyrion II took the throne. Tyrion II was actually, pretty well respected here. As we can see, he was diligent, just, gregarious, temperate. He was a good guy, and he ruled for quite some time, from 343 to 369, when his son Alton took the throne. Well, Alton would be the last of the Lannisters to hold the Seven Kingdoms and hold the Iron Throne, because it was against him that the wildling invasion under King Daemon would go forth and take these lands and invade them and just ravage the Crown lands and beyond. But that only lasted for a few short years. 4 years, the wildlings rampaged around the Seven Kingdoms, and it seemed like none could stop them. But as I said, Dornish plot caused the death of King Daemon here, and his son, Daemon the Cinder, would not be able to hold the wildling army. He was a coward. He was trusting. This was not a character who could keep an army of 40,000 wildlings under control. So it was under his reign that essentially this happened. And what we can see here is we have the most devout. So this is a theocracy led by the Faith of the Seven. They were the ones who ousted Daemon from the throne and essentially took over King's Landing. But the erosion of the power of the Iron Throne by this point was complete, and there was no going back from this, really. I mean, the Dornish became independent and they stopped recognizing any authority from anyone else, and that sparked something of a cascade effect where not only Dorne became independent, but many of the previous Lord Paramounts, and the Lord Paramounts at the time are much different than the ones you may be familiar with. For example, we had House Selmy ruling in the Stormlands. We had House Bracken ruling in the Riverlands. They had been appointed by the Blackfires for supporting them in that war. We had House Weatherwax ruling the Vale of Arryn. We had House Peak ruling the Reach. It was really a much different world than we know, and many years have passed. So things have changed since then. And so with with these established dynasties, the Tyrells had lost much of their power and their prestige. There was no more House Baratheon. House Arryn was a shadow of its former self. The only really retaining families that you would know of, such as the Starks and the Greyjoys and the Lannisters, they all had their own things going on as well. But really, just the sheer erosion of power caused a situation in which the established authorities were no longer recognized. And at that point, things got chaotic. And so with the downfall of the Iron Throne, the Blackfires, came a time when any lord who had the power could name himself king. And so we kind of went back to a time before the Targaryen conquest into a Westeros where the title of king is one that is held by those who have the strength to name themselves king. And so here we can see that there are many small lordships and kingdoms here in Westeros, and we're going to go over a few of them, some of the more interesting ones, and just kind of check out the state of the world. And you can decide for yourself if any of these seem interesting to you. I think we're going to start up here in the north. Now, the Blackfires did not completely lose their power after the death of King Daemon. The massive wildling army, 40,000 wildlings, they, for the most part, left to go back north. They probably didn't really have much interest in staying around in the south. It's not really a place that is suitable for the wildlings. I mean, they were hated, they were being attacked left and right, and so most of them went back north, and they ended up coming under the power of Queen Morna the Beautiful. So she was the inheritor of the great wildling army that had been formed by King Daemon, and she has used it to great effect. You can see that the north no longer belongs just to the Starks. No, the Blackfire wildling army has conquered much of the north, but her rule is pretty unstable, I would say. So although she has conquered vast swaths of the north, and this is probably much more to the liking of the wildlings, it's hard to say whether she will be able to hold it for long, and that's a question that we will have to see at some point. But indeed, much of the north has fallen under her sway. We do still have the Starks. The Starks are now ruling from White Harbor here, and this is kind of the last holdout of the Starks. And if they are able to push back and regain their power, maybe they can take Winterfell back from House Blackfire here, but that's not a guarantee there. In the wake of the Stark defeat, their power was certainly eroded as well. I mean, if the Starks can't defend the north from the wildlings, then it's hard to say that they would have that same level of power, that same level of prestige. Obviously, they are an extremely well-established dynasty, but their power is not infallible, and the Blackfires certainly showed that when they conquered the north. So the Starks are definitely going to have some work to do to regain the north and regain the power and prestige they once held, but that will be something that they will have to work for. We do have the Red Queen Barba of the Dreadfort here. So House Bolton here has obviously taken this opportunity and struck out on their own, managing to retain their independence. We've also got Carholt here. So although they are presumably still kind of not necessarily, like, probably loyal to some extent to the Starks because of the situation here, they are technically independent. So the Karstarks here will have some interesting opportunities. We also have an independent king of Stagos, King Roran, the Berserker of House Stain. That's a pretty cool one. That might be an interesting playthrough as well. And then we also have the Marsh King of the Neck. So House Reed, in the wake of all of this, has managed to retain their independence. There was no way the wildlings were going to get here into the Neck and conquer it. Nobody conquers the Neck. And so House Reed has essentially declared their independence, and the people of the Neck will be free once more. So that's kind of the situation of the North. Lots of interesting playthroughs that you could play through in there. You could play as, say, somebody like House Dustin here and try to form the independence movement that shucks off the yoke of the Blackfire armies. That could be an interesting playthrough. You could play as the Starks, you could play as the Dreadfort. Any of these would probably be pretty interesting, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities once Queen Morna dies, whether by assassination or old age, hard to say. But yeah, the north, pretty cool situation here. It's a little bit chaotic looking, but perhaps you can go and fix the border gore that we are seeing right here. As we travel south, I think we'll take a look at the Iron Islands next. Not really too much to say about the Iron Islands. Obviously, in the wake of all of this, they're going to be doing what they do best, and they are going raiding and conquering land. So they still hold the Flint's Finger here. So they still hold that. They have taken the Cape of Eagles here as well. And then they have also taken the Shield Islands down here in the Reach. So Iron Islands is probably about as powerful as they have been in a very long time. And there's some opportunities to play as the Greyjoy and try to conquer as much as you can all along the coastline. I think that that could be a pretty cool playthrough as well. As we move south here from the Greyjoys, you can see that the Westerlands is a little bit chaotic. And although the Lannisters have ruled the Westerlands for a long time, I think that the reason why things would be chaotic here is because of the conversion of House Lannister to the Faith of the Eight. And this is something that happened in one of those previous seasons. For whatever reason, Tyrion Lannister converted to the Drown God, and so we switch it over to this Faith of the Eight, which incorporates the Drown God. I think with that, and with the kind of loss of the powers of the Lannister, considering that they were the ones who were conquered by the Blackfires, I think that this presented an opportunity for the Lords of the Westerlands to kind of strike out and get away from the Lannisters who have strayed from the Faith of the Seven here. That's why we see a couple different kingdoms here. So we have the kingdom of the Banefort, King Humphrey the Evil, which is just perfect for House Banefort. I think that that's really awesome. We've also got the King of Hornvale, King Conrad Laxlafs of House Brax here. We have King Errant of Norcross here in the Silver Hills. He follows the Warring Star. And then we have House Crakall here, another Westerlands lord who is following the Drowned God. So we also have, and King Braxton here of Fair Isle. So this is House Ball, but they ended up conquering Fair Isle at some point here. So that's pretty good. We've got Ashmark here as well. Not a king, but they do hold Ashmark and probably could be an interesting playthrough as well. I do like House Marbrand. They've got a very good sigil. We'll take a look at the Riverlands here because the Riverlands is pretty interesting now. Like I said, House Bracken was gifted the Lord Paramountship of the Riverlands by House Blackfire when they took the throne, and they ruled it for a little while. But upon the Blackfire's defeat, they struggled to retain that power. So obviously the House of Tully was able to manage to take some of that power back and start to fight against that. And that's why we have King Cormond, the noble of House Bracken, ruling over the kingdom of Southstone. But we also have the River King, Lucius, the Laughing Fish here, who rules the Trident. And, well, they look to rule the Trident, but they don't have as much power as they once did because they have been the subject of some raiding and wars of conquest by the Iron Islands. So although House Tully looks to regain their power and regain the Riverlands, they've got their work cut out for them because they have been facing a difficult time. We do also have a King of the Crossing here, House Faye. We've got King Aegon. Not a great guy. I mean, it's House Frey. What do you expect? Deceitful, but just lazy and vengeful. Not only that, but he is uncouth as well. This is an interesting character. I kind of got a soft spot for House Frey. I know that they're horrible, but I like to imagine House Frey as having potential to be something more than just the horrible house that is hated by everyone. So House Frey could be an interesting opportunity here. They've got their awesome castle here in the Twins. Could they form an excellent kingdom here? Potentially. We've also got a few other lords. You could potentially look here to Fair Market or some of these smaller ones here, Willowwood or Lancewood here. A couple small lords that have managed to retain their independence. We'll see how long they last. Probably one of the more interesting ones here is House Darksea. Now, House Darksea is a Ironborn house that has conquered the Trident's Mouth, but they don't follow the Drowned God. They follow the Storm God. And so this could be a pretty fun house to play with. Who knows if they will manage to retain their power? I strongly suspect they will face some difficulties, but perhaps you as a player could play as King Marin and get that power and fully establish themselves here. We're going to head over next to the Vale because the Vale is probably one of the most interesting ones. Now, like I said, House Weatherwax ruled the Vale for quite some time, actually. The Arrens had been ousted from their position as Lord Paramounts, though they still did retain the Eyrie, and House Weatherwax ruled for quite some time. But obviously, in the chaos of all of this, House Weatherwax did not have the established dynastic legacy to retain their power. And so in the wake of all this, we have seen some independent kingdoms rising in the Vale. So we have the Kingdom of the Southern Vale ruled by House Weatherwax. This is the power that they've managed to retain. We also have the Kingdom of Gulltown, which is ruled by House Grafton, of course. That is the counterpoint to the Kingdom of Runestone. So we've got Bronze King Ormond the Silent of House Royce here. I love House Royce. That's one of my favorite houses. Pretty interesting playthrough you could do here with them. In addition to that, we also have the Kingdom of Strongsong, ruled by King Jarrett Ninefingers here of House Egan. That's a cool one as well. We've got a few small independent kind of duchies over here, Northbreach and Grimholm here in the Fingers. And then we also have King Nestor of the Sisters, House Sunderland here, which has returned to worshiping the Lady of the Waves. So yeah, there's some pretty interesting ones there, including House Arryn, which still does rule the Eyrie, and it does rule the High Road here and the Bloody Gate, but it definitely doesn't have the power it once had. House Arryn has really struggled, but perhaps in the wake of this, they might be able to get their power back, and that is a question that remains to be seen. Perhaps if you play as House Arryn, you would be able to take the Vale back, but they will have their work cut out for them. So that is pretty interesting. There is one kind of secret lord over here in the Vale that we'll just take a quick peek over here, and you can see that there is an interesting house that you could play as if you wanted to do something quite different here and play over in the Vale in perhaps the most difficult position possible here. So, but we won't linger too long on that. You can go check that out yourselves. Over here in the Crownlands, we have really kind of a couple distinct powers. Obviously, the most devout here, the theocracy that rules King's Landing, they've managed to take quite a bit of power here, and they rule over pretty like large swaths of lands. We also have the Kingdom of the Bay here. This is a personal favorite character here. King Thorin of the Bay. This is a descendant of Lord Paramount Rickard Seafroth. Now, this was a friend and companion of Daemon Blackfire, and he was gifted these lands when the Wildlings conquered the Crownlands and the Seven Kingdoms. And in the wake of the Blackfire's death, they have managed to still retain some power. And so King Thorin here of House Seafroth rules the Bay, but he's got some difficulties ahead. He follows the werewood of the Seven, and that is because although his family once worshipped the old gods beyond the wall, they did convert to the werewood of the Seven in order to essentially retain their power here and have a little bit more in common with the people they rule over. So King Thorin here, cool character. This would be a fun one, honestly. Uh, we also have the Kingdom of Cracklaw Point. House Brune ruling Cracklaw Point. Got a young character here you could play as. Kind of depends how you want to play that out. Claw Isle remains independent. Another young character here. Perhaps another interesting one would be King Alfin of Dragonstone. So the Blackfires, although they were pushed out of King's Landing, they still retained the position here in Dragonstone. And so they rule that. They now follow the Valyrian gods because, I mean, Daemon here, or yeah, Daemon the Cinder went a little bit insane and he started following and worshiping the old gods of Valyria here. This could be an interesting playthrough. Could the Blackfires take power back here in the Crownlands? Hard to say, but that could be a pretty fun playthrough there if you want to restore the Valyrian religion. We've also got the Valarians here in Driftmark. They are independent. We've got a few other ones. The Kingdom of the Hook here as well. That could be an interesting little playthrough as well. Pretty difficult position. The Kingdom of the Hook, I think, is probably one of the most difficult positions in the game in this playthrough right now. As we head south to the Stormlands, the reason why the Stormlands looks pretty put together is because House Selmy has ruled it for a long time. Now, after the Baratheons were ousted, House Selmy took over, and so they've been ruling these lands for, I don't know, like at least 80 years, maybe 100 years, something like that. Like it's been a long time. So House Selmy is pretty well established here, but they were not immune to the instability. So we've also got the Kingdom of Tarth, another personal favorite here. This character is really cool. King Redmond of Tarth here. He's a skilled fighter. He is strong. He is hale. This could be quite a fun one. He's in a difficult position because he's quite small and he doesn't have a ton of opportunities for expansion. But I think House Tarth could be a really fun playthrough. Then we also have the Kingdom of Rainwood. We've got House Mertens here ruling this little bit as well. Bringing us over here to the Reach. The Reach is split, and that's because the Reach, due to the events of our previous playthroughs, has gotten chaotic. And we had a lot of back and forth between the Tyrells losing their power, and then House Hightower taking power, and then House Tarly usurping House Hightower, and then the Peaks ending up ruling over them after they sided with the Blackfires. Well, the chaos of that has led to basically a split here in the regions. So you can see that it is split into quite a few different kingdoms. So we've got the Kingdom of Golden Grove, led by House Rowan, very powerful. We've got the Kingdom of the Marches, led by House Peak, which is a pretty cool one. These two are probably pretty close to equal in power here, actually, so that could be pretty interesting. We've also got the House Tyrell, which has managed to retake Highgarden and is trying to take power back in the Reach. They did once rule it for a very, very long time, and so they are looking to get power back, but will they be able to do it under Garth the Eighth? Tough to say, but Prince Raymond here is looking like quite a bit of a better character to regain the Reach under House Tyrell. So perhaps upon the death of King Garth, Tyrell will be able to take that back. We also have House Tarly here of Old Town. Like I said, House Tarly usurped House Hightower, and now they rule from Hightower itself. We've got King Caspar the Cruel here. That could be a fun playthrough as well. And then we also have the Kingdom of the Arbor, Queen Desmera, who really enjoys her drink. She's an albino actually as well. Cool character. Could be a fun playthrough there as well. Finally, we have Dorne, and Dorne has managed to retain much of its power, but it is no longer ruled by House Martell. In fact, it is ruled by House Ronwood, and That, I think, has provided the opportunity for House Dane to split off. So we've got King Dane of Starfall here, or King Jerome of House Dane of the Kingdom of Starfall here. So this is really the only kind of split that Dorne has had just due to their situation. I thought it made the most sense that they would retain mostly stable, but I've got a soft spot for House Dane, and I also wanted to add a little bit of interesting things going on in Dorne. So that's basically the entire world that we've set up here in this scenario. Now, I would like to ask you viewers as we wrap up this video, who do you think would be the most interesting house to play through in this situation? Are there any houses that you would be looking at playing through yourself? And more importantly, who do you think I should be playing through in the next roleplay series set in the Game of Thrones mod? Leave your comments down below. I will definitely be looking at them and taking them into consideration. But until that next series, Wanderers, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.